Early in my career, you didn't see somebody having a Tommy John surgery until they were 19, 20, 21. And now the majority audience, more than 60% of the audience, are 13, 14, 15-year-olds.
This year, pitchers are going to get paid around $1.7 billion, and we still don't know what is causing these injuries.
In 2023, 36% of all MLB pitchers in MLB had Tommy John surgery. In 2025, that number increased to 39.1%. And in 2026, I'd bet my life that number will increase even more. But this isn't just an MLB issue. 20% of youth baseball players aged 9 to 15 seek medical attention for pain in their throwing arm. And kids are having Tommy John surgery more and more every year. But why is this happening? When I was growing up, pitchers rarely got Tommy John surgery. And if they did, they'd never get it ever again. But now in 2026, it's not uncommon for some players to get 2 or even 3 TJ surgeries in their whole career. Well, what if I told you we know why this is happening and the reason goes all the way back to Little League Baseball? But before we get into it, guys, it's actually that time of year again. Baseball's around the corner, which means MLB 2026, the show, is coming out soon. So we're giving out copies of the new game for anyone who's subscribed with notifications turned on. Make sure you have that done. We're going to be giving out some copies to a couple lucky winners. Now that that's out of the way, let's get right into today's video. Before we get into why Tommy John surgery is becoming more and more common, we need to understand what it is first. In 1974, pitcher Tommy John was coming off the best season of his career. He had 13 wins and a 2.59 ERA for the National League champion Los Angeles Dodgers. But there was a problem. He only pitched 153 innings because halfway through the season, he tore his ulnar collateral ligament, more commonly known as a UCL. John described it, quote, as if I had left my arm someplace else. It was as if my body continued to go forward and my left arm had just flown out to right field.
I felt to my 14th win and I threw the one pitch, and right as I got, I'd say halfway through the pitch, I felt this banging sound in my elbow and this sharp pain.
For those who don't know, the UCL is a thick band of tissue that basically connects the bones of the forearm with your shoulder. If a pitcher tore it at the time, their career was over. It was considered the worst injury a pitcher could have because it was irreparable. Nobody had ever come back from a torn UCL, at least until 1975. Team doctor Frank Jobe performed experimental ulnar collateral ligament reconstruction surgery on Tommy John. And to everyone's surprise, it actually worked. The surgery involved replacing the torn ligament with the ligament in the other forearm, therefore allowing the pitcher to use his pitching arm once again. In 2026, there are other options for the surgery, so you don't need to get both arms opened up at the same time. But for 1975, this surgery was revolutionary. Tommy John came back, and he ended up having the best season of his career, finishing as the runner-up in the Cy Young Award voting, both in 1977 and in 1979. This surgery was supposed to save pitchers' careers, but now it's seen as a necessity in both the MLB and youth baseball.
Guys are going shorter than ever in their starts, and they're getting hurt more than ever now. And what the actual cause of that is, I wish I had the answer to.
Back in 2016, just 27% of all pitchers in MLB had Tommy John surgery. That number has now nearly doubled to 40%. It is a fact that pitchers both in MLB and youth baseball are getting TJ surgery more than ever. In fact, kids who don't even need the surgery are still getting it preemptively. Like, why is this happening? That is the million-dollar question, and I do think I have the million-dollar answer. So let's take a look at this chart from RotoWire. In 2002, the average fastball was well under 90 miles per hour. In fact, only the real flamethrowers ever topped over 95 miles an hour. Fast forward to 2025, and the average fastball is 95 miles an hour on the dot. But I know what you might be thinking. Fastball usage has declined over the years. Well, that is true. But while that is true, the velocity of secondary pitches has increased at the same rate fastballs have as well. Sliders went from barely being 80 miles an hour in 2002 to 85 miles an hour. Changeups went from 79 to 86 miles an hour. Hell, even curveballs increased by 5.5 miles an hour over that span. The point I'm trying to make is simple. Pitchers are pitching faster than ever before, and it makes sense why. Velocity is deadly. From 2015 to 2017, MLB hitters hit 300 against 90-mile-an-hour fastballs. fastballs. That average went under 250 on fastballs 96 miles an hour or faster. That's the difference between a Hall of Famer and a player on the verge of getting DFA. Pitchers are throwing faster than ever because it is one of the most easy ways to get hitters out. It's that simple. Because of that, organizations value velocity heavily. Most big league teams won't even consider signing a pitcher if their fastball sits under 90 miles per hour nowadays. So as a result, player development has adjusted as well. Gone are the days of teaching a kid 5 different pitches to get a batter out. Now the game is how fast can you throw a baseball? That's it.
What I think we have learned is that throwing extraordinarily hard is in almost all cases going to wind up with your ulnar collateral ligament shredded.
The counter argument to this would be, look at a guy like Justin Verlander. He was a flamethrower for the majority of his career, and he didn't get Tommy John until he was 38, which is a great point. But that brings us to the second reason baseball players are getting Tommy John surgery so much, and that's the current state of youth baseball in America. When Justin Verlander began college at Old Dominion, his fastball maxed out at 87 miles an hour. And I'll say that again, the inevitable second overall pick in the 2004 MLB draft and future 3-time Cy Young had a fastball that sat at just 87 miles an hour. Verlander only really began to throw heat towards the end of his freshman year once he put on weight, and Old Dominion tweaked the 6'5", 240-pounder's mechanics and started to maximize his velocity. But here's the thing, he was already a grown man at that point. His UCL and arm in general was already fully developed, unlike the literal children that maximize their velocity at 12, 13, 14 years old. The problem with youth baseball now is that it's not about having fun. It's not about developing young kids into being good baseball players with solid mechanics. It's not even about baseball anymore. To me, it just seems like it's about winning. Coaches want to win that travel ball tournament. Coaches want to go to the Little League World Series, and coaches want to get paid. That's the name of youth baseball.
You play to win the game.
And as we've already established, you win games by getting batters out. How do you get batters out? You throw as hard as you can. That is the issue. We have literal 8-year-old children trying to hit 70 miles an hour. High school kids feel like a failure if their heater isn't touching 90. And if your fastball can't hit 80 miles an hour by middle school, you can just forget about your big league dreams. Not only that, but because coaches want to win so badly, they'll have kids throw 150, 160, 70, 80, even 200 pitches in a game. And guess what? They don't get 5 days off like big league pitchers. They have to pitch the very next day sometimes. Why? So that they can try to win a travel ball tournament that ultimately does not matter at all whatsoever. We are actively sacrificing the future of American baseball just so Joe Smith can win his local tournament in Who Caresville, Indiana. It makes zero sense.
It becomes an overuse component. We're also expecting kids to throw harder earlier in age, which is a massive problem. So we really need to look on how we're training the youth athletes and realize we're jeopardizing that future big leaguer.
So what's the solution? How do we save youth baseball in America? Well, it's simple with a few tweaks. First, we need to actually enforce pitch limits. I know youth coaches say they care about pitch limits, and I know they claim to take them into consideration when determining who's pitching on any given day, but the reality of the situation proves that is not true. We need stricter punishments for coaches who jeopardize their athletes on. We need stricter enforcement on how soon a kid can pitch after a start. We need to actually care about these things in order for change to happen. Secondly, stop emphasizing velocity so much in pitcher development. Is it important? Of course. Does it get batters out? Yes. But is it worth a kid getting Tommy John surgery at 14 years old just so that they can get a few extra hitters out in a meaningless youth tournament? No. We are sacrificing potential big leaguers for no reason. So what if a kid can't throw 80 miles an hour by age 16? Who cares if your elementary school kid can't touch 60? These things don't matter in the grand scheme of things. Wait until their UCL is fully developed before trying to maximize velocity. Otherwise, they'll be in their third TJ surgery by 30 years old. Let's focus on getting mechanics down, developing the player at the core and the fundamentals. And as they get older, as their body gets stronger and as they get older, then we can increase velocity. Why are we starting this so early on and doing so ruining these kids' bodies? I know people try to blame pitches like the curveball, slider, or basically any off-speed or breaking ball for why Tommy John is more prevalent, but there is zero data to indicate that. That is simply an excuse excuse with zero evidence to back it up. And the real reason is how we're developing youth pitchers. Tommy John surgery was invented to save pitchers' careers. Tommy John literally came back and pitched the best baseball of his career. Pitchers come back from TJ and somehow they're throwing harder. This surgery is borderline magical in the way it saved hundreds of pitchers' careers. But at the same time, it's a double-edged sword. Sure, it saved players' careers, but it's also enabled youth coaches to look at the pitcher's arm as more of a knife that once dull can be sharpened up with the use of the surgery. When in reality, they're actively ruining those kids' chances of getting to the big leagues. They're actively ruining the future of the sport. Now, that's just my opinion on this. I know it's a quick, short video, a bit of a rant. I think it's important. We need to take care of our kids here. Youth baseball is not going in the right direction. I know we need to focus on mechanics and fundamentals, but now we have a culture where the kids feel like they need to throw 80 in order to be seen, right? And that's counterintuitive, and that's not good because now they're getting injured and now they're ruining their careers that they could have had. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Is this a big issue in baseball with Tommy John and the kids throwing harder? Is there a way that we can fix this? Is there an actual way to like enforce pitch limits and making youth baseball more safe for the kids? Or am I just overreacting? I'm curious what you guys think in the comments. Let me know, and I'll see you guys on the next one.